Hey guys, welcome back. In the last session, we have created a simple Spring Boot application and we have written a hello controller where we are exposing one endpoint called hello and we are returning the welcome to SB lectures. Okay. Now, if you observe over here, when you come to your main application, at your main application, at the class level, at the top of the class, we have, defined at Spring Boot application. What is this at Spring Boot application will do? How it will works? All these things we will be going to see. See, the Spring Boot application automatically scans the entire packages. So over here we have the packages, right? So com.first.sb.api, com.first.sb.api.controller. So whatever the packages which are there inside, which are there in the project, it will scan it. Okay. So if in the packages what are the things are there, we have the controller, it will read, it will scan the controller, it will create an object of it. Okay. So Spring Boot controller, what was Spring Boot annotation, Spring Boot application annotation, what it will do, it will automatically scan the packages which we have defined in our application. Okay. And Spring Boot application will also do one more thing. It will enable the auto configuration. It will enable the auto configuration. See, in your here as of now we haven't written any classes. So if we have written any one class called like for example employee pojo class or employee domain class. Okay. So it will, the Spring Boot, what it will do? It will automatically create the bean for us. In our in our olden days, what we used to do is we have to create a Spring configuration XML file. In the XML file, we have to like we used to provide the bean information, that is the object information using the bean tag. Later they once the xmls are like gone, so we are like creating a separate configuration class, there we will be defining the beans. Now latestly, if you don't want to if you don't want to provide any configuration from the developer side, okay, so what you have to do is you have to, like, when you create a class, let me do one thing, let me create a class. Me create a class. I'll be creating a class called employee. I'll store this employee details in a domain employee, and I'll be storing this employee class in a package called com.first.sb.api dot. I'll say domain. You can call domain, you can call pojo, anything is fine. So here I'm calling as a domain. So you are going to create a employee class. So now you have created the employee class. Now what we will do is we will add some properties for the employee. Of course, for every employee, we will be having the employee ID, employee ID, and we have a string, a name, string employee name, and every employee will be having the salary as well. So these are the some of the properties which I have taken as of now. Okay, so going forward, we will be including more properties based on our requirement. Okay, so now this is a normal class. Okay, this is a normal class. Now what I have to do is I have to make this class as a component so that whenever I start my Spring Boot application, the Spring Boot annotation will read this employee component, and it will create an object of component, and whatever the data we have, so it will use the setters, and it will use the setters to set the data to the employee object, and it will use getters to get the employee related properties. Okay, so we know, right, how to generate setters and getters, we know, right? So what we have done as of now, we have created employee and we have given some properties for the employee, and we have generated the setters and getters for the employee. Okay, so now what I'll do is, in order to make this as a component in the sense, like it is kind of like, one of the annotation which will be given by, which is given by the Spring Boot. So if you want to make your class as if you want to make Spring Boot to create a class, so what you have to do is you have to just annotate with the add component. Okay, when you annotate with add component, so the Spring Boot application annotation, it will automatically scan the packages and it will find the component annotation. If the component annotation is there, then only it will create an object for that class, and it will set the values using the setters. Okay, fine, got it. So now here we have created an employee and we have given the at component at the top of our class. Now Spring Boot will automatically scan this, this particular package, and it will come here inside this package. We have defined employee as a component now, so it will automatically create an object for us. Okay, so let's see how it will do. So what I'll do is, here in the hello controller, I'll do one thing. Instead of hello controller, I'll take employee controller. I'll send some data from the Postman. Okay, related to the employee details. Okay, then we'll read whatever the data which is sent from the Postman, will read in the employee controller, and will set the data to the employee and will return to it. So let's do it. What we are trying, like, let's do it first. So you'll just see it how I am doing it. In the similar way, you also do it. Okay, employee controller, employee controller. So the employee controller. So in order to make this is the normal class. Now in order to make this as a controller, we can use at controller annotation or at rest controller annotation. At rest controller annotation. If you use, so last time we have used at rest controller, right? Now I'll use at controller. At controller. Now if you use at controller, you have to provide the request and response format. Okay. So request, say that, request body. So I'll write this annotation called request body. Okay, I think we need to include the, okay, request scope. I think it is request scope. Request scope. Here you have to provide the request scope. It is not this one, not the request scope. We have to use an annotation called request body and response body, and it is not the part of the I think web. So let me include the one more dependency called rest. Okay, so in the rest we have those annotations. We'll use those annotations and we'll add the request and response. Now as of now, what I'll do is uh, I'll click on this form dot and I'll be updating this add the starter. I'll be adding the starter called rest now. So let's wait. So it's opened. Let me add a rest. Okay. Here we have rest repos. Okay. Oh, Spring Rest talks that is not needed actually. Let me add over here. Okay. So we have added the rest related dependency. Let me check over here. So here we can use request. So still it is not giving it. Response body. Yeah, now it is coming. It is bind up with the. Okay, now it makes sense. Consumes, it will not come now. Okay, so I think it is request response body. Now here we have to give the type, what type of response you want to generate. So I'll say application slash JSON. I want to generate the response. Okay. Now here I'll be giving the value equals to application slash JSON. Still why you're seeing error? Your type. Should you actually? It's having nothing. It's having application slash JSON. It should work. Actually, it is not working. Okay, fine. Then we will use the, instead of using the controller, I'll use the REST controller only. So here I'll show you what exactly REST controller in the sense. See, the REST controller, it is a mix of response body as well. Response body as well. So if you provide the only controller, you have to give the response body. When I'm trying to give the response body, it is not taking the type, what type I'm expecting actually. So by default, the response body should be application slash JSON. Okay, let me try this way. Let me try as it is. Response body is by default, it is um, JSON. So it is not taking that. So let's try this way. Okay, so now employee controller we have. So we are going to expose an endpoint where we will be, adding the data, where we will now where we are getting the data from the Postman. We are using that data, we are processing that data. For example, we are getting the employee related details. Okay, so for that I'll be adding a method called add employee. It's a post request. Okay, the add employee will be taking a employee as a param. Okay, and this will return employee again. The same employee details will return. We'll just add the ID now. Now here public, and let's import the employee. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll create an employee object. Okay, employee MP equals to new employee, then what you have to do is you have to set the data which is coming from the employee ID. Sorry, so I'm not crossing the employee. Let's, for example, let's give it as a 1. I'm not sending the employee ID details from the Postman. So let's say I'm only sending the employee name and the salary. So here I'll be reading the employee details which are getting from the Postman. Employee.getName, emp dot set salary. So I'll say employee dot get salary. Now what you have to do? You have to return emp, So now the thing is that this is a normal method. How a normal method can read the data which is coming from the postman? It is impossible. Okay. So what you have to do is, in order to read the data which is coming from the postman, we have a method called a request body. Okay, we have a annotations, not a method. We have an annotation called request body. Whatever the data which is coming from the postman for a put request, so that data will be bind up over here using the request body. So now this is a post request. So I'll use post mapping. Post mapping. So I have a endpoint called employee. Employee. Okay, fine, got it. So now what we are doing is, from the postman, we are sending the employee details. Whatever the details which is coming from the postman, we are setting up to the other employee, and we are just returning an employee. We are not doing any other thing. We are just returning the same employee details. But the thing is that we are just adding the employee ID to it, and we are sending it. Okay. Normally, when we are using the database, so when you are sending the request from the postman, so we will be connecting to the database. When we add an entry to the database, so the id one will be created, an entry would be created with an id as a one, and the name and salary will be stored in the database. Similarly, here we are not touching the database. Whatever the details we are retrieving it, we are just we are just setting to the employee object, and additionally we are setting the employee id, and we are returning the employee details. Okay, let's go and run this one. Okay, so what we have done, we have created an employee, and we have made the employee as a component, so that the Spring Boot can able to create an object of an employee whenever it is needed. Okay, and it will set the properties. So whenever it is needed, whenever we need it, the Spring Boot will give the object to us. Okay, I'll explore the other one as well. The next thing, the auto void concept. Okay, so as of now, think that, so we have created an employee, and we have made that as a component. Okay, now we have created a controller. So the controller will be having a method called add employee. So the add employee will be reading the employee details. Okay, so and we are like setting those details to the employee object, and we are returning the same object. Okay, so and what type of request it is? It is a post request. So it is coming to the employee endpoint. Okay, fine. Now let's go and run the Spring Boot application. Now let's delete this. We don't need this jar actually. We don't need this jar. Let me delete this dependency. Okay, so now we will be solving our POM XML errors. Okay, unnecessary. If we add that data rest, we need to add the database related dependencies as well. That's why it is causing an error. Okay, so as of now we don't need it. We just run this simple application where we are exposing the employee as an endpoint. Okay, so let me run this one. So here the Spring Boot application is running. Okay, so what is the context path? So first app, how much time it took? It took 3.753 seconds to run the application. Okay, let's open the Postman. Let's open the Postman. See, yesterday we have seen the get one, right? This is a post request. So post request is bit different. It expects you to add some data in the body. In the body, it expects you to add the data. I'll show you how we can add the data. So http colon localhost colon http colon double slash locus local host colon 8080. What is the context path? First app is the context path. And what is an endpoint? So what is an endpoint? Just go there and check it in your employee controller. What is an endpoint you are trying to execute? So employee is an endpoint. just copy this employee, okay, and paste it over here. Okay, so now do not send the request because here it is a get request. Now change it to the post. So if you change it to the post, you need to add the body as well. We need to send the data, na? So we need to add the body. So in order to add the body, we have to check the raw, and we have to select what type of data you are sending it. So text format data you are sending it, or JSON format data you are sending it. So of course we are sending the data in the format JSON only. Okay, so you should know the structure, how the JSON would be looking like. Okay, so the JSON would be having the key value pairs. Okay, so JSON would be having the key and value pair. So every key will be we have, if we have multiple properties, every property will be separated using the comma. End of the property, if we have if we come to the end of the property, we are not going to give any comma. We just simply doing no, we are not doing anything. So here this is the structure, right? So what is the first attribute you are sending it? Employee name. Okay, let's go to the employee. Let's give the same name. So whatever the name we have over here, the same name only you have to provide. Don't give your own names. Okay, just give the, take the your attribute name. Value could be anything. Okay, name, copy the name and paste it over here. What? Name. Here I'll give name as NSK and salary. So let's go to the again the employee and copy this salary and paste it to your Postman and give the salary. This is the salary something. Your, this is your no JSON request. We used to call it in real time. We used to call it as a payload, which will be having some data. So from today onwards, I'll be saying payload. Okay, so this is my payload. I am sending the request. Okay, the request is having the payload, and the payload will be having the information like attribute name and the salary. Okay, now let's fire up the request. Let's send the request. So once you send the request, it is coming to the controller, and the controller is setting up the data. So here see the controller, in the controller what I have written, I have written employed as one, and whatever the data which I am setting sending it from a Postman. See, in name I have given NSK, so NSK it is coming. Salary I have given something it is coming. So you're getting right. Only the employee ID only I am sending it statically. If you send again, the same details it will be returning it until you are going to change the details. Till you are going to change the details, the same name only it will be returning it. So see why here one thing you can observe, even though even though I change the employee ID to 2, why it is not reflecting the changes? Why my Postman is not displaying the employee ID as a 2? So this is the question everyone will face it. Why we are not getting is, see, if you are using a Tomcat, okay, uh, so you should, like, if you have done the changes in the middle, once you start the server, Tomcat server, in the middle, if you have done any changes, the Tomcat will be having the changes which I have done before I start the Tomcat. These are the changes which I have, right? Okay, this is the employee ID I have before I start the Tomcat. Once I start the Tomcat, I have changed the employee ID to 2. I have changed the employee ID to 2. Now the Tomcat don't have this updated information. So what, when you, like, what, when you make a call again and again, it will return the same data only. To return the same data only. In order to sort out this issue, DevTool concept came. So what DevTool will do is, see, it will not load the jar. It will not load the Tomcat again. It will not restart the Tomcat again and again. What it will do is, it will check the code wise. If there is a change in the code, it will update to the Tomcat. Hey Tomcat, we got some update from the code, so you have to update for yourself. So it will update to the Tomcat. That's what it will do. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll add a dev tool. Okay. I'll add a dev tool and we'll run it again. Let's see. Spring. Okay. What I can do. Okay, here I'll check it. Spring, add starter. So here I'll be adding a diff tool now. Once I added diff tool, see developer tools. So I'll directly search for the diff tool. So here it will come Spring Boot diff tools. So just click on that. Next. So it will ask you to add it. So select the pom.xml and click on finish. So now you have added dev tool to your project. Okay. So once you add dev tool, let me see. And one more thing, this is the most important thing. When you add a dependency in your pom.xml, dev tool is not going to see the changes. Dev tool is not going to update the Tomcat. If there is any change in the code level, then only dev tool will do that. Okay, fine. If there is only change in that code level, then only dev tool will update it. But dependency level, it won't do it. Okay, so now let's stop the Tomcat server and let's start it again. Okay, so now right click, run as Spring Boot application. Okay, your application will start now. So your application is started in these seconds. Okay, now come to your Postman. Let me close all these things. First, let me close others as well. Now let me come to the Postman. Let's fire up the request now. Now it is changing. It is displaying employee ID 2 because I have already changed it to employee ID 2. Now let me change it to 3. So now if I change it to 3, automatically DevTools is like, it is, updating the Tomcat. Hey, Tomcat, we got some update. Okay. So it is updating the Tomcat. The Tomcat will be adding the changes now. Now, when you run it again, now the employee ID becomes 3. See, that is the magic we have getting from the DevTools. We are getting from the DevTools. Okay. This one. Okay, so we have like updated the employee ID to 15. Let me fire up the request again. So now we are getting the employee ID as 15 only. So now here you have to make a note. So when you are, I forget what exactly I'm trying to say. Okay, see, a note is this is a small application. You can restart the server again and again. It will take matter of 3 to 4 seconds to restart the server. To up the server also, it may be taking 3 or 4 seconds. In real time applications, the application might be having hundreds of classes, thousands of lines. Okay, so it will take time to load start the Tomcat server. For my application, it will take 2 or 3 minutes to start up the application, to start up the Tomcat server. Now, if you have a change, let's say in our case, we were having the change in the employee ID. So what we were used to do, we have changed the employee ID when we are not using the dev tools. We used to restart the server, and we are once the server is read these updated changes, then only we can able to see in the our Postman. So if we are like using the dev tools, what we are doing, like we are uh, we are using the dev tools, we are not restarting the Tomcat. The dev tools will is giving the information to the Tomcat server. Hey, Tomcat server, we have an updated data, updated code. So where you have to check and compile it, and you have to you don't need to run it. You have to update it. If any errors are there, you have to throw an error. This is a particular line we are facing some issue, something like that. If there is no issue, so you have to update it to the Tomcat, and that you can using the Postman, you can send the request. You will be getting the updated data. Let me change to the 30 as well. Let me come here. Let me send the request. So 30. Can see, right? So here I am not starting the Tomcat server. Okay. Yeah, that's all for now. Okay, let's discuss the other topics by tomorrow. Thank you for joining.